What have we got here? Retina-Curtagon f4 28mm Schneider cruise neck. This is a lens from a Retina Reflex S, 3 or 4 or Instamatic Reflex, or the Retina 3S rangefinder camera. This one's had a bit of a hard life. It's got a selection of dents around the outside edge there of the hood. I can probably push out some of those. It means that it won't take a filter in the state that it's in at the moment. I don't know whether I'll be able to get it good enough to accept a filter, but I can certainly improve its appearance a little bit. So how is this held together? Well, from the front we have the name ring here. That should come out with a friction tool. Failing that, there are 2 pinholes in there in which you could engage a tool. But I'm going to try a friction tool first, see if we can get that loose. Yes, that surprised me. Now I'm using a wooden toothpick in one of those 2 peg holes to revolve this ring. That's loose. Tip it out. That's that section there. You can see where it was threaded in. It's the internal thread here. So it's screwed over something. Lift off our hood. And the thread here, the external thread, that's where the name ring sat. So the first task here is to remove the lens capsule, which is the brass piece that contains the glass lens elements, from the anodized aluminium body. So like a lot of these decal lenses, there are 3 screws and washers that hold the outer focus helical mount to the focus scale ring. So we'll tip those screws and washers out. I'm carefully holding the lens in at the moment. The lens capsule is free. The lens capsule will just lift out of the mount from the front. So we have our outer helical ring here. Dirty old grease, a bit sticky, hardly surprising, and shouldn't be hard to deal with. I'll pop the mount to one side. We'll look at the rest of the capsule. A bit of dust and dirt on the outside surface of that glass. Difficult to tell whether there's a problem inside with dust and dirt. Nice fingerprint on the rear. Pop the capsule to one side. Let's look at the lens body. What I'm interested in here is that the focus should move smoothly. There's a little hint of roughness there, nothing too bad. Check that the depth of field pointers move smoothly. They do. That's in quite a good state. I'm going to strip it down and clean it regardless, but it's always useful if things are in a good state before you start. You've got less problems ahead of you. One of these screws has a touch of red paint on it. It's the screw that aligns with the red alignment dot here. That's a useful thing to do. It helps you when you go to align the lens and fit it back on the camera. It's easier to see where you're supposed to be putting it. It's also got another useful feature. Of the 4 screws that hold the back on here, every now and then someone's going to slip and make a mess of one of the screw heads. Well, the ugliest screw you simply move round to the position near the red alignment mark, and you put a daub of red paint on it when you're finished. That disguises your damaged screw and gives you an alignment mark too. So we'll lift off this back part. This is the lens mount that couples to the camera. This piece that you see here, that is couples with the rangefinder. That's quite stiff and dirty feeling. It's not running smoothly at all. And laying out these pieces in order as they come off. We have the settings lever from the camera. We have our shim, making sure I keep that the same way up so it's easy to put it back in the right alignment. Lift off this setting lever here. It has a spring that fits over a post. That spring is, there's two springs in here. That's the thicker of the two springs, the heavier of the two springs. Lift off our depth of field pointer. This one has a tiny slot to engage with a cam, which is visible here. It runs in a little groove. Here we have a separator that separates the two depth of field pointer rings. I'll unhook the spring from the depth of field pointer ring on this side. Try and swing it out of the way where it won't get damaged. Lift out the depth of field pointer ring. And we're down to the basic part of the mount. So what do we got here? We've got 4 screws holding 4 brass tabs in place, which in turn hold down this plastic piece here, a wedge section in practice, which holds the front part to the rear part. One of these screw posts, of course, is a post for the spring to fit on, so you can use a modified screwdriver to unscrew it. Generally speaking, you don't need all 4 screws out, so I'm not going to remove that unless I have to. So I'll remove the 3 screws here. We'll tip those out along with their brass pieces. Oh, and one of the plastic pieces came out. That's good, that's easier. The other one's still in place, that's fine. Now if we pull it back on this side, we can probably just about pop the front of the lens out of the mount. We can. Front of the focus mount, I should say. And there's a bit of dust and dirt around here. The grease is dried and dirty looking. So I've got to clean all that with some naphtha. There's a lot of dust on this mount. And then we can reassemble that. Some naphtha on a cotton bud, and I'll start cleaning these components up. This is coming off quite yellow and dirty. That'll be old oil, old grease and oil that's migrated to those surfaces because it wouldn't have been there to start with. This lens obviously has some history to it. It's a little bit discoloured and dirty. I suppose that's hardly surprising. It's probably close to 60 years old. It probably is 60 years old. If there was any justice, it'd be retired, but old cameras never get to retire gracefully. So I just want rid of all of this grease. This originally would have been lubricated with graphite grease. All the fluid component of that is long since evaporated, and it's just managed to gather dust and grit over time. That piece is good. Let's look at this piece. Yes, that's certainly dirty. some of the black staining on the inside there where the graphite grease has been will be ingrained into the surface of that anodised aluminium. That's not going to come out. You're not going to clean that. We're not worried about discoloration there. All we're worried about is getting loose stuff off. And it's not even the grease, or the graphite in particular, is not a problem in itself. The problem is the freight of dust and grit that grease will have gathered up over time, which tends to make old grease act like grinding compound and not as a lubricant. It's nearly done. Got to be very careful with this very fine spring here. It's easily damaged. If I can lift it off over the post, I would, but it's difficult to get them to lift off easily sometimes. And sometimes, there, it's off. That's good. Just reduces the likelihood that I'll damage it by accident. Now that little other wedge, it's got quite a pronounced wedge to it, and basically it just runs into the groove on this section and pulls all both sections together. So we'll pop that to one side. That's nice and clean. I'm just going to check that on the mount. You've got to make sure we've got our focus indicator here. You've got to make sure that's on part of the focus scale. It's got the numbers on it. Otherwise this thing won't fit properly. That should clip in, will it? Yes, it does. I'm just checking the feel of this. It certainly feels quite tight. No, that's all right. So, bit of molybdenum paste in that groove where the graphite grease had previously run. You don't need much of this, you're just leaving a dirty mark as much as anything else. Just a thin smear on that front face too. You can probably see that there's virtually nothing to see there, and that's because you don't need much. Reassembling this, swing that over. That's where I want to be. Get that wedge hooked in underneath the edge of that piece there. Get this wedge in place. That's good. Now our four little brass pieces, they have a recess on one side that fits down over the edge of that plastic piece. And the first one I'm putting in place is pretty much opposite the post that we left in on that side. I'm just checking the action, make sure that it's smooth and free, making sure there's not any undue rattle as I flex these parts, which would tell me that that wasn't in far enough. I'll just nip that screw up lightly and check again. That feels good. Take another one of these little brass tabs, checking I've got the recess in the correct orientation so that it sits over the plastic part correctly. Get that screw started. Let's run that screw up. Check that the action's smooth. It is. I'll just nip that screw up there. Check the action again. That's still good. It's still smooth. And the fourth piece. Which is over here. But its coupling piece is off. Oh, I've got one screw in the wrong place. Stupid boy. Move that around to there. There are two holes there. And I had stupidly lined it up with the wrong one. I'm not even sure what the other hole does at the moment. I'll flip this over in a second and answer my own question. Put that in place again, check the action, that's all good. And get the fourth one in the correct position this time round. That action's good. That fourth screw, where would it have been? It was somewhere about, of course I can't see anything. No, it's just an extra screw hole and it's just there to make life awkward for people. That's okay. This is all working smoothly, so our focus adjustment in this component is good. Move on to doing some other parts, and I have to clean up all of these components and put them in place. So starting with this section, this piece, this pointer, I'm wiping that carefully with some naphtha. And that's coming away pretty clean. There's not much on that, so you know there's obviously not really a problem there, or a very slight problem if anything. This can be dropped into place. Well, it's going to go here, and I know it's going to go here because it couples with our gears at this point, and here's our tab here that the spring goes on, the other end of the spring being on that post. So I've got to fit the spring now, and it came off easily, so of course it'll go back easily, won't it? That's the idea. Will it? Oh, it did. I'm very surprised. Normally they're a fight. I can hook that over that tab. Now I'm dragging a tiny thread of cotton with that. That's better. That is a reluctant hook on there. It's a very small spring, of course, and it's a very small hook. That's better. That's hooked into place. That's as it should be. Now the spacer ring. Just wipe that. Now that's a bit dirtier. And that discoloration looks like grease to me. That's good. Now here, this is asymmetrical. It's got a tab here which drops into a slot in the white plastic piece here. The reduced section here runs behind those gears. And around this side, where that spring runs, I'm just going to run a wipe of molybdenum along there so that that spring revolves smoothly around the outside of that and doesn't tend to bind. And the spring just pull that back, pull and drop that ring into place. That's good. So that's our first pointer in position. Our next component is this tiny cam. So I'll just give that a quick wipe. And that cam runs in this little crescent shaped recess here. It'll be a bit thick on it. Let's get that in there. And it's an odd construction. It's got a post with a through hole, a solid post and a smaller solid post. The larger of the solid post drops into that slot. And now we want our other depth of field pointer, which I will also clean. If these components have any amount of grease or anything on them, they'll tend to stick. It doesn't help them move. It tends to glue them together so they're reluctant to move. So they do need to be clean. I'm going to lift this into position. Now we've got a couple of things here. The pointer has to pick up the pin on that cam and be right round in its slot. So we need to rotate that until it's hard up against the stop in its slot like its mate over there, so that the two pointers are timed correctly. Well, that's good. That went smoothly. This piece, this couples to that cam and in turn moves both of those rings. The pin on this piece drops into that hole on the cam. The spring has to be stretched out over the post that the other spring is fixed to, like that. And this is going very smoothly. Something's bound to trip me up. I have 3 screws here they're longer screws that I've ground the heads off that I use to help me align these components while I'm assembling things. And typically I start with one here and one here. These two screw positions are fairly close together. And typically I start with one over here as well. Now you don't absolutely require these things. I've just found them handy when I've been reassembling lenses, because it's a bit of a struggle getting everything connected up. We have this shim needs to go on next. Again, that needs to be clean. If it's got grease on it, it will stop these broad flat surfaces moving smoothly. And if they don't move smoothly, you'll have problems. So I'll fit this in place over those screws. That should do. And the setting ring here, which couples all of this to the back of the camera, this little tab on the lever here actually opens and closes the diaphragm blades on the lens capsule. This drops into place. The notch in here, that slot relieved section here, goes past this tab. Get this on the right way around, I suppose would help. Where are we? This is where I want to be. That's correct. And that only leaves the lens mount component here to be dealt with. This, we have 3 screws and retainers, little retainer plates or clips. They can be removed. So we have the main body, and I'm looking at that. It's a bit dusty and dirty, nothing very surprising there. And here's the cam that runs through. This is the focus cam. This connects to the rangefinder pin on a Retina 3S camera. That looks in quite good order. Just checking it for roughness. You often get a little bit of corrosion on a place like that, in which case it's rough. It doesn't appear to be bad at all, so I think we'll be good there. I noticed that this was rough when we started. It was rough in its action, a bit stiff. It may be down to just sticky grease. We'll find out. Just looking at the finish of this brass here, and as I rub the cotton bud over it, I get an impression of how smooth it is. There's a certain amount of roughness there. Corrosion. Alright, so clean this component anyway. This is nickel plated, so it's fared better. The outside surface is quite clean by comparison, which probably means that someone has cleaned the lens at some stage as well as they could from the outside, perhaps in an effort to make it more saleable, who would know. I'm just going to run around this with a bit of 600 grit wet and dry, just to take any of that roughness off there. Here there's certainly, it's just light surface corrosion, there's almost nothing to it, but it'll just make it reluctant to move smoothly. That stuff, that's all good, that's good. And the inside surface the same. This is just 600 grit, it's very fine. It's not requiring any effort to shift that. And the cam surface down here, oh, that hardly needs any attention. So I'll give that a wipe over now to remove the dust and grit. That should move much smoother, or more smoothly I should say. Bit of molybdenum paste. A wipe round the outside surface, I don't need that much. Molybdenum paste, you need a very thin smear. You're just leaving a dirty mark. There's no more than that. It's not like applying great gobs of grease. Again, on the inside surface I'm doing the same, I'm just wiping around that. If it looks dirty, you've probably done the job well. Drop that into place. Check the feel of that. Is that smooth? Yes, that feels good. Put our little retainers back in place. Now these retainers go in anti-clockwise, I suppose you'd say, from their screw holes, and you can tell that because our mounting screw hole here lines up with a notch. And you just make its two mates look the same. If you put it on back to front, probably no harm done either. These can be a bit trying to get the screws in sometimes. The holes in these little retainers is very close to the thread size of the screw. Sometimes it's awkward to get the screw started because of that. It keeps wanting to tip over instead of driving through. Check those 3 screws are snug. Check that our cam runs smoothly. It does, that's very good. Now we can fit these 2 components together.